Thank you for this opportunity and honor to present in front of everyone. So this is my first time at LAC, and I've had amazing experience already, so I'm excited to share my work and to hear your thoughts and what do you think of it. So my name is Jephthah Rajarathinam, and I'm also representing Cynthia D'Angelo, who's my PI for this project. And the project is about turn-taking analysis of small group collaboration in an engineering discussion classroom. So, and this project is funded by NSF and also our campus research board at University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. So I wanted to give a quick intro on what is collaborative learning. And so collaborative learning is a complex sense-making process. So it has a lot of interactions between multiple students and with the technology that is being used, with the instructor that is around facilitating, and then where a group of students are working together to co-construct knowledge. And what do I mean by that is basically they're building up ideas on top of each other so that they can reach a specific task goal. And then this occurs through iterative social interactions, though. So the students interact with each other, build on each other, and then they finally try to achieve a collaborative task. So why do we need these collaborative learning experiences? So research has shown that it deepens the understanding of students. As students interact with each other, they negotiate, explain their understanding to each other, and then they challenge each other, thereby building their understanding of the topic. It also increases persistence in STEM fields because of increase in sense of belonging and things like that. And then finally, it also is used as a way to develop collaborative skills, which is categorized mostly as the social soft skills, and which is required when you're in a research field, like in engineering. You need to be able to explain your ideas, put it forth, be able to argue for and against it, and so these are important collaborative skills that is also developed during these experiences. So why does this research matter? Collaborative teams are a crucial characteristic of the workplace. When you go to a workplace, you have teams of all kinds of people working together on solving a problem, and then these usually comprises of multifaceted teams, and so that is one reason why students need these experiences. The other is, and therefore these have been required by accreditation boards for engineering, for example like ABET and IEA, ask for collaboration as requirement in engineering classrooms. So collaboration has been implemented in engineering classrooms all around, and so there's been a widespread implementation. And one key component of that is the instructors, as well as how the students' tasks and the technology that is being used. All these factors play into a role. And one piece that I'm very interested in is the instructor piece and how that affects the students' outcome. So in this specific study, I'm looking at audio data and how we can use that to understand collaborative learning. So just a background on what's been done in the field. So there's an increasing use of audio data in the field of collaborative learning in terms of supporting teachers and students. Voice activity detection is an important tool that is being used, and there's different types of tools like Lena and Dart, which is used to detect classroom activity, measure teacher strategies and things like that. But very little research is done in real classrooms, and the research that I'm describing is done in an actual classroom, and we're kind of looking at what we can really measure from the audio data. So the big research question we have is, how can we understand and conceptualize collaborative group work using individual audio data? I'll go through what that means soon, specifically through turn and speaker features. The sub-question for that is, what is the association between audio features and qualitatively coded indicators of collaboration, and what are the patterns in these audio features that describe collaboration? So a brief background on the context. So this study was part of a larger study called C-Steps, which is a collaborative sketching tool for engineering problem solving that my peers and I developed over a period of 6 years. And so This specific data is from 2019, so pre-COVID. I don't exactly know what that means, but just out there. So this was a 16-week undergraduate engineering course, which was required. And there were lectures, and this particular data is from a 15-minute discussion session they had every week. And these were basically, the students were grouped into a group of 4, and then the classroom was, they had around 8 groups, roughly 30 to 32 students, and it was facilitated by a TA and 2 CAs. TAs are teaching assistants, basically grad students who come into the course. They've given like a brief introduction on like what's going to happen, and then they basically like are involved in facilitating, collaboration, making sure the students make progress. CAs are course assistants. They're basically undergrads who've taken this course before, excelled in it, and so they're asked to help the TAs out. So, excuse me. There you go. And then, so the task they work on is a collaborative engineering task. So, and it's an ill-structured task. What does that mean? So, ill-structured tasks are basically design problems. So we basically take a real-life problem and we break it down in such a way that it is vague enough that students have to make strong assumptions at the beginning, plan the activity, and then actually try to solve it, and then iterate upon what they've designed, and based on certain criteria we give to the students. And so this was co-designed with the instructors by part of our research team, and so that's the task that the students worked on. In terms of the data, so we collected, again, this is part of a bigger project. We collected video, we collected audio data. So video data was collected from like overhead cameras that were part of our lab. So we basically invited the students into our lab, which is a space which has like 8 cameras, and then we have group microphones in each of the tables. And so we invited students over, and it simulates a real classroom, and then the TAs and the CAs were facilitating. For this study, we also collected individual audio from groups. If you can see the image here, the student is wearing a head-mounted microphone, which is unidirectional. And so we use these microphones. 53 students participated in this specific study of collecting audio, which is 15 groups. And then over 5 weeks, which were 75 groups. Of these, only 20 were selected, and we called it good audio. What does that mean? It's basically students who wore the headset properly for the whole 50 minutes. One thing we realized in classrooms is students take it off because it's not like comfortable, or like they go to the restroom, come back, they don't wear it back again. A lot of different reasons why they would remove the headset and not put it back on. And so we just selected the 20 groups and looked at their audio. And of those, there's like 11 groups of 4 students and 9 groups with 3 students. All right. So the methodology used, we coded the video data for student interactions, and I'll briefly describe what those interactions are. And the way we coded is we took a window size of 20 seconds, and each 20-second we had coders coding for different types of collaborative behaviors. And then we took the audio data and we ran it through voice activity detection software, which is called OpenSmile, which is a freeware we used, and we got turn and speaker information from that. So the unit of analysis, again, as I said, we chose 20 seconds as the unit of analysis, and one of our research team, Luc Paquette and company, they did research on what is the best window size to use, and the conclusion of that paper, you can read more on it if you want to. The conclusion was basically that we can isolate collaborative behaviors, and 20 seconds was the right amount, and they did analysis on different time window sizes, all the way from like 10 seconds all the way to 50, and then we ended up with 20 as the ideal size for our data set, for our context. And so what this meant for the audio data was that we had to aggregate the information that we got in terms of the turn information, the speaker information, to that 20-second clip level, so that we can ground truth the information and compare the different informations we got from the audio. So what did we do? We looked at the duration of each student and then each turn of the student. And so what ended up happening is like we would have like a 20-second chunk. Student turn might be spilling over to another 20-second clip. And we had to make decision on how to account for that. And so what we did is like, where's the midpoint of the duration? And that is where we chose to aggregate the information about the duration and the turn information. And so this is clearly a limitation, and interesting thing to think about is like, what does this mean in terms of when we are thinking about interpreting our data? So for the video coding, we looked at 3 different student interactions: task relatedness, whether they were working on task or off task; the group talk content, whether they were talking about the task, whether they were off task talking about anything else, or whether there no talk. And then finally, we looked at whether the TA or the CA, which for easiness sake, we'll just assume it's TA all the time. So we looked at TA group interaction and whether there was interaction between the TA and the group, whether there was no interaction, or it was just like an unrelated conversation, which also happened in the classroom. And then for the audio features, we looked at turn information, mainly looking at the number of turns per each of the 20-second clip, as well as the duration of the students within the 20-second clip. We also looked at the speaker information, how many unique speakers were speaking during the 20-second clip, and the order in which they were speaking. From our analysis, I'm just going to highlight a few main results that we have, and one thing I'll start by saying is like there's a lot of more interesting work to be done on this and are currently underway. So the first result I want to share is just like a basic, so if you look at the graph, it shows the number of turns in the x-axis and the count, and it's segregated as chunked into 10-minute groups. What we wanted to look at here is we knew that the data was, the TAs gave an introduction at the beginning, and then it was like a 40-minute chunk of student discussion. We wanted to see how the pattern looked like in terms of communication, and we found an interesting pattern where like a good portion, there was an even distribution of how students were interacting with each other, whereas at the beginning there was no interaction because it was usually students reading the worksheet, or it was like the introduction by the TA. And looking at this graph where we look at the median turn duration, again, versus the number of turns, this was very interesting because, and each chunk is like whether one speaker was involved, 2 speaker, 3 speaker, and 4 speaker. And the interesting thing to note here is that as the number of speakers increased, we saw a gradual increase in the mean turn duration. This is very interesting because shorter turns are usually involved with like student building agreement and consensus, which is an important aspect of collaboration. And longer interactions, which are usually associated with like negotiation and elaboration, are also high-level indicators of collaborative learning. So further study needs to be done here on, do we actually see that? And currently work is underway to actually verify those things. Finally, I want to talk about teachers interacting with the students, and this chart here shows on the vertical slice, it's the class chunk from 10 minutes section, and in the x-axis, it's basically the number of unique speakers. And as you can see, the TAs usually talk with 1 student or 2 students most. This has significant consequence in terms of what that means in terms of collaboration, because studies have shown that TAs are necessary in terms of motivating and sustaining collaboration within students, and one best way to do it is by interacting, making sure everyone is interacting with the TA, thereby they're like starting to interact with the group as well. And so these are great if these are basically clarification questions, but more study needs to be done to understand what is exactly happening, and it's underway right now. So quickly, limitations. Aggregation to 20-second clip meant that we had to make some assumptions on how audio data is going to be aggregated, which is a limitation, and different ways needs to be thought about in terms of how we can deal with this aggregation and what that means in terms of interpreting data. The other thing is the voice activity detection software that we use. had a 90% accuracy. One important issue we had was background speech, which is basically speech from other groups around them. And voice activity detection software does flag that as voice activity. And so we need to find a way to think about how we could deal with that. And so that is another issue we had. Future work, looking at student turn overlap, and which is an important predictor of collaboration, looking at intervention and how that affects student speech patterns, and how this implies for student and teacher feedback needs to be thought about. And so with that, I acknowledge NSF and Campus Research Board from University of Illinois for funding this, and these are the references, and thank you.